Hey up everybody and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be doing a video about my predictions for the 2020 NRL season. So I'm going to be going through 1 through to 16 with the teams, and I'm going to be picking who I think is going to come first, last and in the middle of the road. Just a bit of background with me. I've been doing predictions for a couple of years now. Last year and the year before that, I got 5 out of the 8 teams to reach the top 8 right, and I got the Premiership winner right in 2018 and 2019, and the year before that, in 2017, I got 6 of the 8 teams in the top 8 right. I didn't get the Premiership winner, but I got the 6 out of the 8 right. I also run a Facebook page called Rugby League History. I'd be able to put the link in the description below, but for some reason I can't get the link. I can post my Facebook link for my actual profile, but I can't get the Rugby League History one. And I also wrote a few articles in regards to Rugby League players. I'm also one of the main administrators on Wikipedia. Now I know with Wikipedia anyone could add fucking whatever they want, but I'm an actual administrator on there. I've created over 500 pages, done over 3,000 edits. So most of the stuff you see on Wikipedia, it's done by me. So without further ado, let's get into the first team. So who I'm picking to come first in the 2020 NRL season, and I think that's going to be Melbourne. Now, if you know me personally, you'll know that I absolutely hate Melbourne. Can't stand them. But one thing I've noticed over the last, 6-7 years, every year the media and everyone's saying, when's it going to end? When's this dynasty going to end? When are they going to finally not make the top 8? And then when Slater left, people kind of went, oh, they're losing a bit of their shine. And then when Cronk left, it was the same thing. Oh, they're going to be missing Cronk. But year after year, they keep making the finals. I think I've done a bit of research, and I think only 3 years since they've been in the competition, since 1999, have they missed the finals. And one of them was in 2010 when they were deducted all their points for deliberate and mass breaches of the salary cap. On paper, they're pretty much exactly the same team from last year, except that Will Chambers is no longer there. He's gone back to rugby union. Vunivalu is leaving at the end of this year, and I believe also Adokar is leaving as well. I'm not too sure where he's going to go, but I think from what I've read, the main reason he wants to leave Melbourne is to go back to Sydney because all his family's from there, and he said that he's homesick. I think that they will come first again. Whether they'll win the Premiership, I'm not too sure. But last year they were runaway minor premiers with that exact same team that they got this year. So I'm predicting them to come first. Also, there's the motivation that it could be Cameron Smith's final year. And I'm pretty sure all of his teammates will want to send him out a winner if he is going to retire this year. I think that Melbourne's domination of the competition, or being up there every year competing for the title, it won't truly end until Bellamy and Smith leave. I think if you look at the win ratio of when Cameron Smith's there and when he's not, it's quite incredible. So I think Melbourne will come first again this year. They'll be burdened from last year where they were runaway minor premiers and then they choked in the preliminary final to Eastern Suburbs. So that goes into my second team, who I think is going to come second this year in the regular season. That's going to be Eastern Suburbs. Now, some people might go, Eastern Suburbs, who are they? Well, It's the Sydney Roosters, but I've always refused to call them the Sydney Roosters because I think it's just a daft name. They're still registered to the NRL as Eastern Suburbs District Rugby League Football Club. So I just see Sydney Roosters as just a daft marketing name. Their real name to me is Eastern Suburbs. It's what they played with from 1908 to 1994 before they changed their name to Sydney Roosters because of the Sydney City Roosters and then Sydney Roosters because of the Super League War, wanting to widen their fan base. But anyway, I'm getting off topic again. So, I think Eastern Suburbs will be up there again this year. They've practically got the same squad as last year, except for one major exception, which is Cooper Cronk. They've got Kyle Flanagan coming in from Cronulla-Sutherland to replace Cooper Cronk. I think other than that, 1 through to 17, they got the same team. They got all the main players there: Tedesco, Tupou, in the backs, Manu, and they got Warrior Hargreaves, Boyd Cardner, Angus Crichton. It's pretty much exactly the same team. I think that's they won't be as dominant as last year. I think Cooper Cronk is such a big loss, but I think they got enough talent across the park to cover that loss. I'm not too sure if they'll go 3 in a row, but I certainly think that they'll be up there again. Once again, they're going to be a bit nomadic when it comes to home grounds. That they got a few games at the Sydney Cricket Ground. They got the big game at North Sydney Oval, first game there for any team in the top grade since 2005. They got a couple of games on the Central Coast, and I think they take one to Adelaide as well. So it didn't seem to bother them last year, but that can be a factor. But I think they've got too much class and experience not to at least make the finals of the top 4. So number 3, who I think who's gonna come third, is South Sydney. Again, with the top 2 teams, South Sydney have pretty much got exactly the same team from last year. They lose a really big name in Sam Burgess to an early retirement, shoulder injury. Greg Inglis retired, although they made the preliminary final last year and the top 4, but basically Greg Inglis wasn't there for most of the year. As everyone knows, they've recruited Latrell Mitchell. That's been a bit of a circus, the whole fullback thing, and he would, actually getting him in the first place, going there. He went to North Queensland for a fishing trip, he said, and then he said he was going to regret it if he signed for West Tigers. So they've pretty much got exactly the same team as last year, South. 2018 and 2019, they made the preliminary final. They got Wayne Bennett as the coach, as everyone knows. He seems to get the best out of nearly every playing group that he's ever been with. I think they've got a lot of experience, a lot of good firepower in the backs, and I think the half pairing of Reynolds and Cody Walker will be able to guide them around the park really well. So that's my tip for number 3. I think that South will once again make the top 4. So we pick for the top 4. The 4th team to come in the list is the Canberra side. So last year, Canberra, as everyone knows, made the grand final. Controversial decision towards the end of the game with the 6 again. They had numerous chances to actually win the game before that when Cooper Cronk was sin bin for Eastern Suburbs, but they failed to capitalise on that. Canberra themselves, just going to go through the list now just to refresh it in my memory. So they've recruited George Williams from Wigan. and everyone knows Curtis Scott and the circus that's been going on with him. He could be potentially banned. We don't know. They were the two recruits that they got in the off season. Leaving the club was Joey Leilua, Jordan Rapani, and Eden Caesar. They were the three main ones that they've lost. And alongside that, they also released Royce Hunt and Brad Abbey, which most people probably wouldn't know. They were like they played for Mounties. So I think 1 through to 17, Canberra still has a very good team. I think the start of the year they might struggle a bit, especially with John Bateman. He's out for 6 weeks, I think, with an injury, with a shoulder injury. But I think through 1 through to 17, they've got a good mix of experience with youth. Bailey Simonson showed that he can replace Jordan Rapana. He did really well last year on the wing, Bailey Simonson, for a rookie. They've still got the nucleus of that team that drove them to the grand final. They've got Hodgson at hooker, Croker at centre, Charles Nickel-Cockstadt at the back there. They got some good forwards. I just think that after what happened last year and how they got so close, and because it's such a long off season, I think that they'd be really burning. They'd be burning inside. They'd be thinking about that game all the off season. And I think the old saying is sometimes you have to lose a grand final to win one. I just think that they're going to be up there again this year and they're going to be challenging. I think they've got a good squad, Canberra, and also their home form is usually pretty good, but last year it was spot on. So coming in at number 5, who I think is going to come 5th, I've actually gone for Brisbane. Brisbane, we all know what happened last year. They were beaten 58-0 by Parramatta, eliminated from the first week of the finals. The worst loss in their history. They've signed Brodie Croft from Melbourne. That was no big secret in the end. I think Brisbane, they're under a lot of pressure this year. Brisbane have really high standards when it comes to how and where they finish, especially with coaches we've seen in the past. When Ivan Hanjak was the coach, they missed the finals for I think the first time ever, or maybe the second time in the history. He was terminated. Anthony Griffin, he got him to in the top 8, but they didn't really go that far, and the board said, sorry, we've had enough of you. That's when they went back with Bennett, and then they made the grand final in their first year. But I think besides Brodie Croft, they've re-signed Jordan Carhu from North Queensland. And they've also got Jesse Arters from the Gold Coast. The losses going through it, well, Sam Tagatese, Sean Fenton have retired. Matt Gillette's a big loss. He retired prematurely. James Seguiaro was released after his escapades. So I think they got a good squad, Brisbane. They got some exciting young players, some experience in there. Obviously, they get the favourable draw like they do every year. Friday, most of their games will no doubt be on a Friday. So they're getting that 7-day turnaround all the time. I think they'll be under a lot of pressure, especially Sealbold, but I think that they've got a good enough team to make the finals, and Brisbane have such high standards that they'll expect themselves to make the finals. So I've got them coming in at number 5. Number 6, I've got Manly Warringah. So Manly have had a pretty quiet off-season when it comes to recruiting players. They've only recruited Danny Levi from Newcastle. Manly were the big shock last year for me. I had them coming not last, but somewhere down towards the bottom. There's just something about Des Asley, where he manages to get the best out of players. And last year they didn't exactly have the best squad, but they punched above their weight and they did really well. And they almost got close to making that preliminary final until South got a few favourable calls, scored a couple of tries, and then they won the match. But they showed the week prior against Cronulla that they can really dig deep and they can punch above their weight. I think Manly will do quite well this year. It all depends on injuries, of course. I think last year they were doing really well, and then Tom Trbojevic got injured, and then they just kind of went. After that, they made the finals, but they were missing kind of that spark at times that Trbojevic would have given. I just think that they'll be playing finals again this year. I think they got a good squad, lots of young players, lots of experience as well with Cherry Evans and some of the others. Their home form last year was okay. Brookfield, as it was in the past, I remember when in the 90s and stuff like that, and even past that, Brookfield was always kind of known as a bit of a fortress. So yeah, I see him making the finals again this year, and I think as long as Des Hasler's at the helm, I think they're capable of doing really well this year. So my number 6 pick. No, sorry. Fucking hell. My number 7th, the team that I think is going to come 7th this year is going to be North Queensland. Now, they haven't made the finals since 2017 when they made the grand final. They're still going through that Jonathan Thurston hangover thing. 2018, I remember it was a bit of a shite year for them. They had a few injuries and then they ended up coming towards the bottom of the table. Last year, they had a few injuries and there was excuses kind of going, oh, they're just going through the Jonathan Thurston era or that the hangover. I think this year, especially Paul Green, the coach, he's under a lot of pressure to deliver. They've signed, well, everyone knows they've signed Valentine Holmes. He's originally from Townsville, so he'll feel really comfortable up there. They've also signed Reece Robson from St George, Easton Masters from West Tigers, and they've also signed a couple of other lesser known players. I think they'll make the finals this year. They won't finish top 4, but I think they'll finish towards the bottom end of the top 8. I'm going to put them in for 7th. They've got the new stadium opening up in Townsville, so who knows, they might turn it into another Western Sydney Stadium type of a vibe. I think they play Brisbane in round 1, which will be a sellout up there. I think their season really rests on if everyone can stay healthy. I think that they'll do well, but see, hypothetically, if Jason Taumalolo got injured, or see if Valentine Holmes got injured, I just think they don't really have the depth. But if everyone stays healthy, I think that they can they can make the finals. I think that they've bought some good players. I think Easton Masters is a handy player, same as Reece Robson. But obviously Valentine Holmes, Premiership winner, he's the big marquee signing, and yeah, I'm going to have him coming in at 7th. So coming in at 8th, I've got Newcastle. Now, last year I picked Newcastle to make the finals, and for the most part they looked like they were going to be making the finals, and then all of a sudden they just crashed and burned, and then there was rumblings about Nathan Brown, the coach, and it all summed it up really when the reporter asked Keelan Ponga and says, did you hear about Nathan Brown getting sacked? And he's going, hey, I'm trying to drink my strawberry milkshake here. You just see with some of the reactions from the players, they were really happy that Nathan Brown left as coach. So this year they've made a good signing with Jaden Braley coming from Cronulla, and also they've signed Gehamat Shibasaki from Brisbane. They've lost Sean Kenny Dowell. He's already playing over here in England with Hull KR. Slade Griffin and Nathan Ross both retired. Jamie Burer also retired, and Danny Levi's gone to Manly. I think last year the Newcastle, they showed that they could make the top 8, and they had the potential, but they just kind of fell away. I think this year they've got another good chance. They got a good squad, and I think that they can definitely make the finals. I'm not too sure about this new head coach that they got. I think it's his first ever major head coaching gig, so be interesting to see how he goes. But I think they've got some good players in some key positions like Ponga at the back, Mitchell Pearson they have. So I've got them coming in at 8th. I think they'll sneak into the finals. I'm not too sure if they'll go out first week or second week, but yeah, I've got them making the finals. I think they'll have a better season than what they did last year. So coming in at 9th, I've got Cronulla-Sutherland. So they've brought in Connor Tracy from South Sydney, Jesse Ramian from Newcastle. Everyone's probably already aware of that. He was making some drama last year, wanting to leave Newcastle, all that keeper. And they also signed Cameron King from Featherstone, but Cameron King's been ruled out for the year with an ACL injury, so that's him gone. The losses, they've lost Sasaya Feki, that was a big one. Jaden Braley, Carl Flanagan, Paul Gallen, as you all know, is retired. Kurt Keatwell, he was a handy player, he went to Penrith. Matt Pryor, one of the Premiership winners, he's gone to Leeds. And Aaron Gray, the former South Sydney player, he was released, although I haven't found an explanation as to why. I think on paper, Cronulla-Sutherland have got a good team. They've got some very experienced players in there like Townsend, Johnson, Woods, Fafita, Gray, Dugan, Moylan. I just think the fact that they're playing away from home for 2 years, they're playing at Cogra Oval while the ground in the Leagues Club's being renovated. Also, there's been a lot of talk in the off-season about players being unhappy. So you've had Josh Dugan, you've had Josh Morris, seeing that he's unhappy, he wants to leave, wants to go to Eastern Suburbs. You've also, I've read a couple of articles about Bronson Sherry, how he kind of says, oh well, I'll see where I am next year. He kind of seems like he wants to leave as well. John Morris as the head coach. Last year I thought he did quite well, but in terms of other coaches out there, he's quite inexperienced. So I think that mixed with not playing at the home ground for 2 years, and some rumblings with the players. And then also I read today that Moylan's out for a bit. I think no doubt Cronulla will be competitive. I think that they'll win a few games, they'll be competitive, but I think that they just lack a few things to make the top 8. I could be wrong. I mean, Parramatta didn't have a home ground. I mean, they played all their matches in 2017 at the Olympic Stadium. They ended up coming top 4, so I could be wrong there, but I think Cronulla will just miss the 8. They've got some exciting players coming through. I like that Hamlin Ueli. Then you've got Ronaldo Mulitano, and then they've got some good depth as well. Their feeder side is Newtown, and Newtown won the New South Wales Cup last year, so they got some good depth. But I just don't see him making the top 8. I think they'll just finish just outside. So the team that I think is going to come 10th in 2020 is going to be the West Tigers. They've signed Billy Walters from Melbourne, and then they've signed the Leilua brothers, Luciano from St George and Joey Leilua from Canberra. Zane Musgrove finally gets to play for them after having his ban lifted, after his court case was all finalised. They've lost Mahi Fanui to Hull. Robbie Farah and Ben Matalino have retired. Same as Robbie Rocco, and Easton Masters went to North Queensland, as I said earlier, and Ryan Mattison made his highly publicised move to Parramatta. So I think on paper, West Tigers, they've got some inexperienced players, but they've also got some experienced players. I think they got a good coach. I mean, they're heading in the right direction. They've got Michael Maguire as the head coach, and as we all know, he coached South Sydney to their first premiership in 43 years, and he was also at Wigan, I believe, before that. He's inherited a team. Well, last year he inherited a team from Ivan Cleary, so I think it's going to take 1 or 2, maybe 3 years for him to put his imprint on the team and how he wants them to play. The thing with the West Tigers, especially in years gone by, is that they're very inconsistent. Like, I think it was last year and the year before. Like, say for example, they'd beat Melbourne, and you kind of go, where was this all year? Or where's this come from? And then the next week they'll lose to the Gold Coast, and then the week after that they'll beat Eastern Suburbs, and then the week after that they'll lose to St George. That's just I think the last couple of years they've just been really inconsistent, and I think couple that with poor retention and recruitment, it's always left them outside the finals. And another interesting thing is, since they've become the West Tigers, since they merged in 2000, they've finished 9th 6 times in 20 years. So it says something about their inability to make the finals. I think for the most part they'll be competitive this year, but I just see them missing the finals. I think even though they come 9th last year, I think on the field they'll be a bit more consistent, but in the same sentence they'll be inconsistent as well, if you know what I mean. I think just looking at their squad there, they've got some good players. I think it might be Benji Marshall's last year. I think the player most under pressure in the team to perform is going to be Luke Brooks. I think he holds the record for most games played as a halfback in the NRL era without playing in a finals match. So the pressure will be on West Tigers to make the finals this year, but I just don't really see him making it. So sorry to all you West Tigers fans out there. I got a few mates that go for them, so I'm sorry. Coming in at number 11, I've got my team, Parramatta. Now some of you might go, why have you put them at 11th for? Well, I'm just going off experience. I'm going to be making a full video for Parramatta for their 2020, but one thing that Parramatta hasn't done well since winning the Premiership in 1986 is handling expectation. Whenever the club is expected to do well, we don't. Whenever we're not expected to do well, we do well. I think Parramatta this year, they've recruited quite well. They've got Regan Campbell-Gillard from Penrith. I think he was really unhappy at Penrith, so maybe going to a new club, being around a new group of players, manager, coach, all that. I think, who knows, he might recapture the form that he had in previous years. And Ryan Mattison, as I mentioned earlier, he's come back to the club where he was a junior. The losses, we've lost Manu Ma'u, he went to Hull. Tepai Morowe went to Rugby Union to play for New South Wales Waratahs. Matt McKillerick retired, Tim Manor retired, and Greg Lalesio, he went to Gold Coast, and Josh Hoffman was released, so I don't know where he ended up. I think on paper Parramatta have a good team, but I'm only really putting them 11th place because I know better than most. They do not handle expectation. I've seen some of the predictions from the experts, like Jamie Soward and all that. They're all predicting Parramatta to come first, second, third. They've been seeing that they're gonna be competing for the title and all that. I just think that they just don't handle pressure. I think they got a good draw to start off with, but one thing that was really concerning from last year was the away form. Home form, we turned Western Sydney Stadium into a fortress, but away from home we were shocking. So hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully, Parramatta, if you're out there listening to me, please prove me wrong. But I just, like 2018, we were predicted to win the Premiership or be up there. We ended up coming last. 2019, that was expected of us. We were predicted to come last again, come fifth. So who knows? And that leads on to another inconsistent team. The team that I think is going to come 12th is Penrith. Penrith is kind of like, I've always likened them to Forrest Gump. They're like a box of chocolates. You don't know what you're going to get. And that's the case with Penrith. It's just, they're really inconsistent, and the last couple of years things have been predicted of them and they haven't done it. And last year there was all this hype with Ivan Cleary coming back and James Maloney was there and all this key bit. And then they ended up, at one point they were coming last until they rallied towards the end of the year. They've signed Apasai Coruscant. I think that's a good signing. Capewell's a handy signing from Cronulla, and Zane Tetavano from East, the Premiership winner, he's signed for Penrith. They've released a lot of players, Penrith, in the off-season. I think they've released about 12, but some of the names that you'd know about: Regan Campbell-Gillard, as I mentioned earlier. James Maloney went to Catalans. Sione Katoa went to Canterbury-Bankstown. Wade Egan went to New Zealand. Tim Grant and Sam McKendry both left. Tyrell Fui-Mayano went to St George. And Frank Winterstein was also released, but there was another couple of players after that, so I don't know. I'm just putting Penrith at 12th because they're just so inconsistent. They've got some good players in certain positions on the field, but who knows where they're going to finish? I mean, I could be totally wrong. They could come top four. People could laugh at me for saying that, but I think just you just don't know what you're going to get with Penrith. I think even their own fans sometimes go, "What team's going to show up this week?" Don't know. So for the 13th position on the table, I'm going to go for Canterbury-Bankstown. So they've signed Dean Britt, who's the son of Darren Britt, former Canterbury player, Joe Stimson from Melbourne, and they've signed Sione Katoa, as I just mentioned earlier, from Penrith. And they've released some players that most people would forget about pretty quickly, or might not know who they are. They got rid of New Brown, Danny Fualalo, Michael Leitcher, John Olive, all released. So I think looking at the spines of every team, I think Canterbury's got one of the most inexperienced spines. Besides the fullback with Tenny Zelezniak, the half pairing of Lachlan Lewis and the lad that's come in to replace Kieran Foran because he's out for most of the year. They're very inexperienced. And then at hooker they've got Jeremy Marshall-King, who also hasn't played a lot of first grade. They've got some speed in the backs. They've got Remus Smith. They've got Jade Knockenbar. Forward pack is all right. They've got Dylan Napper and they've got Joe Stimson coming in, Eden Tolman, Josh Jackson. And I just think, I don't know what it is. When certain times when I watched Canterbury last year, I just kind of went, where's the points going to come from? And they were just such a boring team to watch. I think they're going to be competitive this year, Canterbury-Bankstown. They're going to cause a few upsets. Most of their game last year was based around defence and trying to frustrate opposition teams. I remember when we played them towards the back end of the year, when Parramatta played them, they didn't really do much in terms of attack, but in defence they were pretty hard to break down, and they just frustrated our players. One thing I've noticed, which is a bit of a trend, the last 3 years, as soon as Canterbury season's kind of dead and gone, it's over, they start playing. Like in 2017, they went on that run towards the end of the year. They beat St George in the last game of the season, which cost St George a place in the finals and let North Queensland make the finals, which we all know what happened then. 2018, the same thing. They were coming last, and then they rallied. They beat 3 of the top 8 teams in a row. Last year, the season was dead and gone, and then all of a sudden they decided to start playing. I think they won about 4 or 5 games in a row. And mathematically, they almost made the finals, but it's just I don't know what it is with Canterbury-Bankstown. When I look at their squad, it's just not. I just don't know where most of the points are going to come from, and I think they'll be competitive. They'll frustrate a lot of teams, but they'll also, I think against the top teams they'll struggle. I think they'll get most of their wins from the teams around them, or the teams that are just in the finals. I don't see them beating the likes of Eastern Suburbs, Melbourne or South Sydney. But I think with Canterbury as well, they've also got that salary cap issue as well. I remember the CEO said about 2 years ago that they can't really make a big major signing until 2021. So I think this might just be another transition year for Canterbury-Bankstown. So coming in on 14th on the ladder, I've picked St George to come 14th. They've signed Isaac Luke from New Zealand, Trent Merrin from Leeds, Breen Liami from Newcastle, Tyrell Tuimayono from Penrith, and Billy Britton from South, and they've let go one of their main players, Gareth Widdop. He went to Warrington. Reece Robson, he went to North Queensland. Jeremy Lattimore, the greatest of all time, he retired. And then they've released a ton of players. They've released. So I think on paper, St George have a very, very experienced team. When you look at especially their forward pack, they got Tyson Frizzell, James Graham, the Sims brothers, Paul Vaughan, Trent Merrin. They've got Isaac Luke coming in. He's played over 250 games. Their backs are not as experienced, but there's some talent out there. But I think I know that trial form is not really something that you should look into. But with the Charity Shield game, St George were on top, and then South brought on the sort of reserve team, their younger players, and they just run rings around the St George face team. I think St George are kind of in a bit of a dilemma at the moment because they're kind of stuck with Paul McGregor as the coach, and you've got Shane Flanagan there, but he's not allowed to be the head coach. He has to just be the assistant. I know that you shouldn't always blame the coach, but I think a lot of the way that St George play, it kind of comes down to McGregor and his style of play. They've also had a really bad off-season. Cameron McInnes got injured in the 90s, out for about 6 to 8 weeks. Matt Duffy got a fractured cheekbone, he's out. Corbin Sims broke his arm again. So in a way it kind of turns out that Isaac Luke's signature was a masterstroke, because they let go of Reece Robson and McInnes is out, so Luke has to go in there whether he likes it or not. I don't know. I just don't really expect much from St George this year. I just see not me. I think they won't have a good year this year, but they won't be as bad as last year. So for you St George fans out there, I'm sorry. I've got nothing against St George, but I just think that they're gonna struggle this year. I just have a feeling. 15th position this year, second last I've gone for New Zealand. They've only made one major signing over the off-season, and that's Wade Egan from Penrith. And their losses include Blake Ashford, he retired. Leggy CO went to Hull Football Club. Isaac Luke went to St George, as I just mentioned. And Sam Lasoni went to Gold Coast. Looking at the New Zealand squad, the less said the better. They just look really kind of thin in certain areas. I think a lot of their points are going to be down to Roger Tuivasa-Sheck and how he plays. If he's on fire and he's setting up the plays and everything's going sound, then I think New Zealand could have a good year, but there's a lot of pressure and responsibility on his shoulders to be the main kind of X factor in the team. I just don't have a lot of hope from this year, especially when you got someone like Stephen Kearney as the manager, as the head coach. Sorry, he's got one of the worst win percentages since the NRL started in 1998 under its current form. So I've experienced his coaching when he was at Parramatta, and he's not the most inspirational person. Let's just put it that way. I'm not really expecting much from New Zealand this year. Maybe they might go out and shock me. I think that was 2018. I predicted them to come towards the bottom of the table, and then they ended up coming, I think, 7th. But unfortunately, if you're New Zealand fans out there, I just don't see you making the top 8. I think your hopes and your dreams rest on Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. And then coming in at last, I've got the Gold Coast. They've signed Jonas Pearson from St George, Greg Lalesio from Parramatta, who he couldn't get a game with us, and they also signed Erin Clark and Sam Lissoni. And they've lost Michael Gordon, he retired, everyone knows that. Will Matthews retired, Jesse Arthurs went to Brisbane, Riley Jacks and Brenko Lee went to Melbourne, Leilani Latu went to Warrington, and Jack Stockwell was released. When you look at the Gold Coast team this year, they've practically got exactly the same team from last year. I think their biggest signing in the off season wasn't actually a player; it was the coach. I think Justin Holbrook, he's in for a rude awakening this year as head coach of the Gold Coast, and the task that's ahead of him. I mean, he did really well over here with St Helens, but doing well in the Super League and doing well in the NRL is a totally different story. The competition over here is totally different. Everything about the game over here is totally different to the game in Australia. I'm not saying that he's a bad coach, but I think he's going to find out very early on just what he's kind of got himself into. I don't have a lot of hope for the Gold Coast. I think if you're a Gold Coast fan, then one of the positives is that Ash Taylor has come back after his bout with mental illness. So I think even though he wasn't performing well last year, I think they still missed him at times. I don't think that they will be as bad as they were last year, where they only won 4 games all year. I think they'll win maybe double that this year, maybe 7 or 8 games, but I still think that they'll come last. I don't have a lot of hopes for the Gold Coast. I might be wrong again. I've predicted the Gold Coast to come last a couple of times, and then they've always managed to rally. But last year was a new low for that club, and also there's a lot of external pressures as well. The future of the club doesn't look that great. There's been talks of them being relocated or kicked out. I mean, the whole club, except for 1 or 2 years, has been a bit of a basket case ever since they come in. I was reading something today where the owner of the Gold Coast or the board, they said in 2015, he said by 2025 we want to at least have 1 premiership. Well, it's 2020 and a premiership's, I don't even think the most ardent Gold Coast fan would be thinking about a premiership right now. Their main goal at the moment is to get some self-respect back in the club and to not come last again. But even though I don't like the Gold Coast, I can sympathise with what they're going through, you know, being a Parramatta fan. I remember 2012, 2013 was a horrible experience. And 2018. There's just something about Parramatta coming last, isn't there? But anyway, I think I've gone on for a bit too long now. It's 50 minutes. So it's almost double the time than what the other lad that I was watching his predictions. He went for about half an hour. So anyway, that's my predictions for the NRL 2020. Hopefully I get some right so I don't look like a total idiot. If you like the video, please click the like button, subscribe, comment below on who you think is gonna come in the top 8 and finish in the bottom 8. Let me know. I love having a bit of banter when it comes to that. Make sure if you're on Facebook to follow Rugby League History. I post stuff every day. And thanks for watching the video if you made it all the way to the end, and I'll catch you all later. Bye.